Alright, well, Stitch vs. Rocket was done. That was a solid episode. Guess I'll have to start working on my review for it now. Oh, right, let's see who's up next then.
Hallelujah! Holy shit!
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
What's the
Everybody
procedure,
stay
everyone?
calm.
What's the procedure?
Stay calm.
Okay, a bit unexpected, but oh my god, one of my most wanted episodes is finally happening, and words cannot express how freaking excited I am for this episode. This is the most I've been looking forward to an episode since freaking Hercules vs. Sun Wukong. Everything is here for an amazing episode. The phenomenal 3D animation team at the helm, the genjutsu illusions, the cool one-liners from both characters, the cool jutsus and force abilities, the track that will most definitely take notes from Imperial March, the potential for an absolutely amazing death scene. Oh my god, this is going to be awesome. Oh yeah, Stitch vs. Rocket was okay too, I guess. In all seriousness, I wasn't overly hyped for this matchup like a lot of other people seem to be. Not because I don't like it or anything, it's a fine matchup. I just don't have any strong feelings towards it or the individual characters. Though this was one of the Raptors' most wanted episodes, so I'm happy that he got that. Regardless of my feelings of the matchup itself, this has been an episode that people have been wanting for a very long time. So it has a heck of a lot to live up to. Did it deliver? Well, let's find out. The rundowns were pretty standard. Stitch's was the more unique one out of the two for obvious reasons. It's always interesting seeing new franchises analyzed in the show, especially ones that are unique as Stitch. Hearing them cover all the different side stuff that Stitch has done, like the Lilo and Stitch anime, was pretty interesting. And talking about all his insane feats was also funny, considering you don't really expect those kind of crazy feats coming out of this little blue fuzzball guy. The writing was also pretty tight, it's paced really well, and there was also a cutaway gag. There's not really much in particular to pick apart or anything that stands out. It was just a solid analysis for a character that's pretty unique for this show. Rocket's was a bit better in my opinion, mainly because the comedy was significantly better than in Stitch's. It does have some of that basic Marvel/DC flavor that has become standard with the show, but it's not nearly as bad or as oversaturated in other episodes, since most of the time they're focusing on aspects of his backstory that are unique to him and the Guardians of the Galaxy, since, well, that kind of stuff hasn't really been covered in Death Battle as much, so a lot of it was pretty new to the series as a whole. The closest it got to being another generic Marvel rundown was the stuff related to Thanos, and even then it didn't last very long. Boomstick's segment about raccoons was also pretty funny and probably the highlight of the whole rundown for me. And I also liked how he took over the rundown when it came to Rocket's arsenal. It's always fun when Boomstick starts talking about the stuff he's passionate about. It makes these characters feel more alive. Besides that, very standard rundowns, nothing really to write home about and by no means the best the season's had, but they were still alright. Though I will say you'll probably get more out of this rundown if you're more invested in the characters and the matchup as a whole, unlike me, unfortunately. I wish I could be more invested in this matchup, honestly, but I don't know. Anyway, moving on. On to the fight. And you know what? This is basically everything that this fight should have been, and everything that I had wanted from it. No over-the-top galaxy-destroying displays of power, no over-the-top action that takes itself too seriously, just a fun time with these two characters, and their arsenals. It's not perfect, there are a few nitpicks that I had with it, but I'll address those later. Firstly, the comedy is most definitely the best of the season so far, which, for this kind of fight, should take priority in my opinion. There's a lot of moments throughout the fight that had me laughing out loud, which is something I wasn't expecting. And a lot of it mainly comes from the line deliveries from Jeff Shine, who plays Rocket, who also surprisingly plays Chris Redfield in Resident Evil Village and Carlos Oliveira in Resident Evil 3. So there's some fun fact for you Resident Evil fans. His voice for Rocket is basically perfect, and the way he delivers his lines are absolutely hysterical. My personal favorite is this, obviously.
What did you say about my mother?
And also the line later in the episode where apparently Stitch's language was so foul that Rocket decided to pull out the Thanos Buster pretty much immediately, which unfortunately went over my head initially, but it hit me during one of my rewatches. Also, I love that the whole fight just takes place on Space Hawaii, and they do not elaborate on it at all. It's just Space Hawaii. It's pretty funny. For me, it's very reminiscent of the Space Australia jokes from Dragon Ball Z Abridged, and I find that awesome. In terms of other comedic moments, while this wasn't intentionally funny, I'm sure, this bit where it's obvious they recolored the Sonic Spin Dash sprites for Stitch, I thought was pretty funny for some reason. And both of Stitch and Rocket's final lines before the end I also thought were funny. And also, killing the ice cream guy was unnecessarily brutal, if not kinda funny. I legitimately recoiled and made like a noise of sadness when I saw that he just freaking exploded. In terms of the actual fundamentals of the fight, as per usual, the 3D backgrounds and sprite work all look great. Rocket's sprites in particular I really like for some reason. It felt like a nice blend between the movie and comic version of the character, though it does lean more towards the movie version I feel, but that's fine. The effects and sound design is all top-notch, as to be expected with Modern Death Battle. The track is alright. I get what it was going for, and it is pretty unique compared to what we normally get. And I think if they did go for a more metal or rock type song, like with their other episodes, it wouldn't feel right. So I think the direction they went for this track was good, though it's not really something I'd listen to on its own. And it doesn't come anywhere close to Fireborn, or even some of the tracks from the previous season. But it complements the fight well and fits the general atmosphere the fight was going for, though it did take a bit to get used to initially. There are a lot of individual moments to enjoy throughout the fight too. The setup is basically exactly how I expected this fight to start, with Rocket's ship getting wrecked and whatnot. There's the previously mentioned My Mother scene, Rocket using his wits to lay a trap for Stitch, Stitch surfboarding on the water, the Thanos Buster Blast, and basically everything about the death. Speaking of which, the death is pretty good. I like how it starts by playing into Stitch's one exploitable weakness, and then follows up with Stitch taking advantage of the environment, and in a fashion that's very in character for him. Flying out of the water, surfboarding on the gun that Rocket had just previously tossed into the ocean. I think that's what that is. I don't think so. I thought it was when I was actually writing the script, but then upon one of my other rewatches in between finishing the script and recording, I don't think that's what that is. It might be something different. I don't know. If someone else picked up on what that is, please let me know. Anyway, Stitch flies the gun directly into Rocket, wishes him a lovely day in Hawaiian, bites his wrist thing, and lets Rocket fly into his satellite thing, and it explodes into fireworks. Rocket's death felt pretty in character, with him less distraught and more frustrated that he went out like this than anything. Fireworks were a nice touch, they look pretty, and the murder of the poor ice cream guy, as I said before, felt unnecessarily brutal but also kind of funny at the same time. I also liked the added touch of Ringmaster saying double KO at the end, and I also liked at the end of the conclusion where Stitch busts into their booth, which is a callback to Wiz bringing up the fact that Stitch has like invaded other Disney properties, which I thought was also a very nice touch and a pretty funny way to end the episode. And that's the fight in a nutshell. A pretty fun time all throughout, and I think that's what they were trying to go for. This fight is just meant to be a fun battle with fun exchanges between the characters and their abilities, and that's exactly what we got. And it doesn't try to be anything more than that. I'm glad that the people who were wanting this episode so badly weren't disappointed, and that it turned out to be, just pretty good objectively. Before I give it a proper ranking, let me go over some minor criticisms that I had throughout the fight. Nothing too bad, just stuff that I noticed upon rewatch that kind of bugged me a bit. One, I think this shot of Stitch getting shot by all these turrets should have lasted an extra second or two because it kind of cuts off abruptly and doesn't really give the attack time to sink in long enough before the next shot. Two, they don't really play into Stitch's high IQ as much as they could have. He has moments towards the end of the episode, but he just kind of runs around aimlessly as he's getting blown up by Rocket during the middle, and later he just kind of mindlessly attacks Rocket's shield, giving him plenty of time to summon his Thanos Buster, which in terms of the first part is funny and cool and all that, but considering they're both on equal terms when it comes to intellect, I would have liked for them to show that off a bit more, kind of do more of a Killua Misaka thing, but it doesn't really take away from the fight all that much compared to other episodes. And three, I kind of wish Stitch's Ohana transformation was a bit more impactful. Truth be told, I didn't even know what it was until I rewatched the analysis, and even then, they don't really spend enough time on it considering how much of a power increase it gave Stitch. Even then, it doesn't last very long when he does transform, and the transformation's not very impactful. Didn't have to be crazy or anything, but at least make a bigger deal out of it than they did. Kinda just felt like a less impactful version of Killua's Godspeed transformation from the last episode. Anyways, while this episode wasn't my personal favorite of the season so far, that title still belongs to Chosenborn, I still think this episode is a solid 8 or 9 out of 10. There's really not that much wrong with it besides a few personal nitpicks and a pretty lackluster analysis. I still might prefer Killua vs Misaka over this personally, just because it had a stronger analysis, albeit slightly weaker fight overall, and also a character I actually cared about, but I think this episode is overall stronger. And now moving on to the next time, and I said basically everything I wanted to say at the beginning. I am so incredibly excited. This has become one of my favorite matchups ever, and one of my most wanted for at least a year. Everything is here to make an incredible episode that, in my opinion, could rival some of the best the show has to offer. I'm really crossing my fingers that they don't screw this up, and I hope that it's not just a copy of Obi-Wan vs. Kakashi. Not that taking notes from that episode would be a bad thing, that episode is incredible. But I just hope that it's not a clone and does its own thing to try and make it amazing in its own right, Anyways, that's all from me. Sorry if this didn't seem as in-depth as some of my other reviews. I just don't have a lot to say on this matchup as I have with stuff in the past. Though I'm sure the Raptor will have his own more passionate and in-depth breakdown considering how badly he apparently wanted this episode, so if that's out by the time this video comes out, then go watch that. Also, check out some of my non-death battle videos because they're a lot of fun to make and I'm very proud of them. Anyways, that's all for me and I'll catch you all later.